Good morning and welcome to the Unitarian Universalist Fellowship of Midlands online worship service. I'm Susan Meyer, Worship Associate for this morning's service. If you have not already, please type in the chat box who you are and who you brought with you today. Unitarian Universalism is a welcoming and inclusive religion. It encourages us to keep open hearts and minds because our experience, conscience, and reason are the final authorities in religion. It affirms the inherent worth and dignity of every person and that we are all connected to each other and the earth. If you are visiting us today, a special welcome to you. We appreciate you spending some of your Sunday morning with us. If you have any questions, please let us know in the chat box, by phone, or through our Facebook page. If you have been attending for some time and feel that this is your spiritual home and are considering becoming a member of the fellowship, please contact our minister, Eric Severson, or our welcome team member, or let us know your interest in the chat box. If you have a chalice or candle at home and would like to join in our chalice lighting remotely, now would be a good time to get that ready. We will include joys and sorrows this morning as we normally do during the service. You will want to find the participant icon to raise your hand for that. We will move on to announcements. You'll see them on your screen. All of our announcements are available in the weekly Candle Flame newsletter. During the summer, the weekly Candle Flame will be pared down. New article submissions will begin again in September. If you have any questions, please contact Wendy at office@uufom.org. Next week's service will be led by Donna Clark, Executive Director of Emmaus House. She will talk about the ministry of the Emmaus House in Saginaw and how it helps women transition from jail, prison, or rehab back to independent living. If you have your candle or chalice at home and would like to light it now, please do so. Please join in reading our chalice lighting words today, number 432 from the hymnal. If someone would scatter seeds on the ground and would sleep and rise night and day, the seed would sprout and grow. The earth produces itself, first the blade, then the ear, then the full corn in the ear. When the grain is ripe, the harvest is come.
The opening words today are titled The Primary Elements of a Garden from the Inward Garden by Julie Moir Messervy. We remember the sensation of walking through a flowery meadow, swimming in a rocky pool, wandering in a deep forest. These experiences in nature become images that are felt through our bodies, our minds, and our souls.
Now, with your mics muted, please join Melanie in singing our opening hymn, For Flowers That Bloom Beneath Our Feet. The words are anonymous and the music is by Severus Gastorius.
For flowers that bloom above our feet, for tender grass so fresh and sweet, for song of bird and hum of bee, for all things fair we hear or see. Giver of all, we thank thee. For blue of stream and blue of sky, for pleasant shade of branches high, for fragrant air and cooling breeze, for beauty of the blooming trees, Giver of all, we thank thee. For this new morning with its light, for rest and shelter of the night, for health and food, for love of friends, for everything that goodness sends, Giver of all, we thank thee.
Our story today is Frog and Toad Together by Arnold Lobel. Frog in his garden, Toad came walking by. "What a fine garden you have, Frog," he said. "Yes," said Frog, "it is very nice, but it is hard work." "I wish I had a garden too," said Toad. "Here are some flower seeds. Plant them in the ground," said Frog, "and soon you will have a garden." "How soon?" asked Toad. "Quite soon," said Frog. Toad ran home. He planted the flower seeds. "Now seeds," Toad said, "start growing." Toad walked up and down a few times. The seeds did not start to grow. Toad put his head close to the ground and said loudly, "Now seeds, start growing." Toad looked at the ground again. The seeds did not start to grow. Toad put his head close to the ground and shouted, "Now seeds, start growing." Frog came running up the path. "What is all this noise?" he asked. "My seeds will not grow," said Toad. "You are shouting too much," said Frog. "Those poor seeds are afraid to grow." "My seeds are afraid to grow?" asked Toad. "Of course," said Frog. "Leave them alone a few days. Let the sun shine on them. Let the rain fall on them. Soon your seeds will grow." That night Toad looked out his window. "Drat," said Toad, "my seeds have not started to grow. They must be afraid of the dark." Toad went out to his garden with some candles. "I will read the seeds a story," said Toad. "Then they will not be afraid." Toad read a long story to his seeds. All the next day, Toad sang to his seeds. And the next day, Toad read poems to his seeds. And the next day, Toad played music for his seeds. Toad looked at the ground. The seeds did not start to grow. "What shall I do?" cried Toad. "These must be the most frightened seeds in the whole world." Then Toad felt very tired and fell asleep. "Toad, Toad, wake up," said Frog. "Look at your garden." Toad looked at his garden. Little green plants were coming up out of the ground. "At last," shouted Toad, "my seeds have stopped being afraid to grow." "And now you will have a nice garden too," said Frog. "Yes," said Toad, "but you are right. It was very hard work."
I invite you now to center yourselves and enter into a time of reflection, meditation, or prayer. Today's meditation is by Ken Druce from A Passion for Gardening. Tending the soil with busy hands sets the mind free to dream and can soothe the spirit like no other pursuit. Now Susan will share our reading for today.
Our reading today is titled Recreation for a Lifetime by Ken Druce. I met a young horticulturist at a botanical garden recently, and we spent several minutes chatting about the plants that she hoped to tend. We were meeting on common ground as two garden lovers, and we chatted on excitedly, sharing ideas about culture and information about little-known species that we both learned to love. But when she mentioned that she grew one of these species on the windowsill of her parents' house where she lives, and that she hoped someday to have a garden of her own, I suddenly felt every one of my 51 years. I wondered how she viewed me, dreading the idea that she saw me as a contemporary of her father, which I was. I want to seem cool, but then I had an awful thought. Good God, I've got houseplants older than this girl. I mentioned this encounter to a friend who was halfway in age between me and the young gardener. It's just a state of mind, she assured me. All gardeners are young at heart. And it's true. All gardeners I know always seem to have one foot in the future, wondering what gifts they'll get from the garden tomorrow, next week, and next year. Gardening is truly a lifetime recreation, one that keeps us fresh and on our toes or on our knees until the end of our days. Now let's share in an interlude titled In the Flower Garden, a suite for piano, number 6, Heliotrope, by Platon Branoff, played for us today by Melanie.
Thank you, Melanie. Our reflection today is, what is your garden? When I was growing up, gardening meant growing fruits and vegetables. My grandparents had a farm on M55 between West Branch and Prudenville, and most summers I spent there, helping plant, weed, and harvest tomatoes, strawberries, zucchini, cabbage, and other vegetables. In the interest of full disclosure, I spent a lot of time wandering around in the back 80 acres of woods, pestering the cattle and other animals. Among my not so acceptable activities, and I'm sure my grandmother's favorite, was swinging from haymow to haymow by the ropes holding the blades used to haul the bales up for storage. I've idealized this pretty idyllic childhood, and it makes up a good portion of my ideal garden. When I was about 10, my parents bought a house with an acre of land, already set up with flower beds and half an acre of vegetable garden. I helped here as well, and while I enjoyed watching what I planted grow, weeding and picking bushels of beans became something to complain about as I started high school and became a cranky teenager. From the time I entered college until a few years after graduating, I had little opportunity to do much gardening. Eventually, a rental with a large backyard drew me back out to plant annuals, roses, and of course tomatoes. Buying my own small house with a decent sized, if oddly shaped backyard revitalized the gardening bug. I used to say I started gardening because I hated to mow the lawn in a pie-shaped backyard. Push into the corner, back up, push in again. Did I mention that in the interest of the environment, I was using an old-fashioned rotary mower? Sorry to say the rotary mower did not last long. I moved to Midland with the purchase of this small house, and Midland was very different from what I had been used to. I used to say I skipped up here. It's almost a hardiness zone lower than Bay City, which means slightly shorter summer and slightly colder winters. And the soil in my yard was much more problematic than the deep, fertile topsoil I'd left behind. My roses became the world's most expensive annuals, and my tomatoes got blight and bugs. Fertilizer drained away into the sand, and my idyllic view of gardening developed some holes, just like the leaves on my tomatoes. Looking for help, I read gardening magazines, bought books, and talked to anyone I thought might know something about gardening. I got a lot of information about ornamental plants from catalogs, notably White Flower Farm, a pretty high-priced quality nursery. Things got somewhat better, except my roses and tomatoes continued to sulk. I became interested in different plants and found a flyer for the Master Gardener program at a nursery, and decided that here was my source for more information. This was one of the best decisions I've ever made. It began with classes, including lecturers with impressive backgrounds in horticulture. The volunteering requirement of the program put me in contact with other gardeners and gave me information about how I could use my gardening skills to help in the community. Along the way, I made some lifelong friends. It also made me think what a garden represented to me, as my garden friends all had their own visions of what a garden should be. My vision back then was pretty regimented. Flowers here, vegetables there, and nice neat rows. I'd visited gardens here in Canada and Great Britain and had an itch to replicate the English cottage garden, but I couldn't match the sweep of mixed perennials in my postage stamp yard. When I married and we moved to our current place with 8+ acres, mostly wooded, I was pretty much freaked out. Anything seemed possible. I tried all kinds of things all at once. My friend Len told me I was the master gardener of biting off more than I could chew. Martha Stewart's crew could probably have whipped it into shape, and I'm still struggling with some of my overreaching ideas. The Master Gardener educational requirements were an ongoing opportunity to learn more. Among the garden speakers at the numerous seminars I attended was Julie Moir-Messervy. She's a garden designer who trained in Japan and has created gardens of amazing beauty. Her message was that the journey of the gardener should begin with a vision. What does your inward garden look like? Should be the first step in designing your garden. Needless to say, this threw a monkey wrench into my grandiose but disorganized plans. I had plenty of visions, I thought, but no single idea of what my garden should look like. I was trying to recreate everything I had liked and admired in all the gardens I had known. My grandparents' veggie garden, all the formal and informal plantings I had seen, those cottage gardens I drooled over. I don't say that I immediately screeched to a halt and refined my vision. I did begin ruminating on what I really loved, what gave me satisfaction. I'm still a control freak, but I think I've come to terms with not being able to control everything. What I really like is what nature can do without our interference. I still want my flower beds and veggies, but I hope I'm learning to let go of those things I can't control. I'm using more native plants and tried to plant a meadow over the septic field. However, my meadow and the flower bed next to it have become one. I think I like it. I've become, or maybe I always was, confused about which plants are weeds. Generally speaking, blue flowers or nice looking leaves will get a plant a spot in my garden, at least temporarily. I like the wild edges and the woods. I'm a tree freak. I don't much like lawns except as a backdrop or frame for flower beds and someplace to walk. Fortunately, my husband Bruce tolerates my quirks. Okay, and all right. Well, here we get to that. I hope that my vision has come to be closer to our UU principle and respectful of our part of the natural world. And perhaps my vision has been altered by my discovery of Unitarian Universalism. Many of my friends have their own visions of what they see as an ideal garden, and each one is different. Julie Messervy describes two types of gardeners, dirt gardeners and mind gardeners. Most of us are both. The mind gardener doesn't actually need a garden at all, planting imaginary vistas or having someone else do the dirty work and admiring the results. The rest of us strive to bring our vision to reality with our own hands. Gardening will teach you patience, as Toad discovered. Sometimes the waiting is the hardest work. Gardeners, I think, are predominantly optimists, planting seeds, waiting for them to come up, waiting for spring to see if the bulbs we buried will become the flowers we dreamed of all winter, and planting slow-growing trees that someone else will enjoy. Like Ken Druce, I believe that all gardeners are young at heart. There will be time to work on my vision, both in my mind and with my hands in the dirt. As long as I can physically manage to dig, I'll continue to be a dirt gardener. And when I need to stop, I'll still be a mind gardener. Gardening has been one of the activities that have kept me sane during this challenging year, and I hope your gardens are doing the same for you. Thank you.
We affirm the work of this fellowship and its mission through our financial contributions. We continue to rely on you, paying your pledges and providing what you would otherwise drop in the collection plate. While our in-person activities may be suspended, our staff continues working hard to provide the services we need. They and the bills still need to be paid. Please give as generously as you can, and may what you give bring you joy. Please take this time to write a check if you wish and mail it to the fellowship at 6220 Jefferson Avenue, Midland, Michigan, 48640. To donate online, please stay after the service for instructions. Another option is to set up bank autopay, which can be arranged by asking our treasurer, Vicki Rothar, for the UUFOM checking account number. Then have your bank set up a regular payment from your account. Thank you for your generosity. Now share in an offertory interlude another piece from In the Flower Garden, a Suite for Piano, number 5, Water Lilies by Platon Branoff, played for us today by Melanie. Thank you, Melanie. Now with your mics muted, please join Melanie in singing our closing hymn for The Earth Forever Turning by Kim Oler, arranged by Nick Page.
For the earth forever turning, for the skies for every seed, for our lives, for all we cherish, sing we our joyful songs of peace. For the mountains, hills, and pastures, in their silent majesty, for the stars, for all the heavens, sing we our joyful song of peace. For the sun, for mountains and thunder, for the seasons harmony, for our lives, for all creation, sing we our joyful praise to thee. For the world we raise our voices, for the home that gives us birth. To our joy we sing, returning home to our blue green hills of earth.
All right. Thank you, Melanie. And our closing words today are by Elizabeth Sell Jones. We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts until we are together again.
Thank you to everyone who helped make this service possible today. And we thank you all for joining us today. If you can stay and chat, great. If you need to go, we understand. Whatever you may encounter this week, please know that the love of this community goes with you until we are together again. Many blessings.